Alright, what's up guys? I'm doing another tier list. I plan to do this a monthly thing, but for some reason Juice hasn't updated their tier list at all. Or DM hasn't. I don't know who's running this, but Fafnir is currently the newest god. They don't have Erlang, Shen, or Terra. Terra would obviously be a new, but we'll get to that. And Erlang Shen would probably be between S and S plus. My guess would more likely be S. So let's start with Agni, classic A, good clear. Without Power Pot, he can be a lot better. You might see him rise to A+, possibly even S within coming weeks. Without Power Pot, he can be used, has a lot of CC, has a lot of good damage. AMC, your classic B tier. It's been the longest running joke in Smite, but this is because he has no escape, and his mid-game kind of falters as he can be camped by anyone, literally anyone, support, mid, or jungle. Plosh will also be B. God's only good against healers. Healers are kind of coming back into the meta, but they aren't relevant enough for Opwash to be relevant. On her is going to be A+. You're probably going to see him a lot more in the meta without Golden Bow. He has good clear, and the built-in penetration from his passive is really good. He also can box really well in a jungle setting, or if you're close to a wall, he can really tear you up. Amaterasu, she'll be A for now. Loses a lot of matchups in solo, wins only a few. Her late game really does make up for it though. You need to really just farm her until you get to mid game, and then you can start doing something. Just don't lose too hard in solo. Anubis will be B as well. I don't think this god's completely out of the meta. You can pick him in some comps. He has a lot of damage without Power Pot. You can justify his early clear. He has good objective secure. So Anubis is still decent enough to pick him in the right comp. Alquang will be your first pick, first ban. This god is really just too good to deal with. His level 5 is probably one of the best out of any god in the game, just because of how much damage he can do. With the removal of Power Pot did hurt him, but it hurt other junglers as well, so he's gonna kind of stay at S+. Afro will be A. You can play her in mid decently. You can play her in solo and support not so decently, but you can still play her there. Just because of her new passive giving her protections gives her a lot more survivability. Actually, we're gonna put her in B+, just because I don't see her as much. Excuse me. Apollo will be A+. The global ultimate's really what's doing it for me. His clear's not the greatest. Death Soul getting a buff kind of helps him. But other than that, there's nothing that's really changed with Apollo since last tier list. Arachne will be balanced. Removal of Power Pot helps her a lot. She didn't really need Power Pot to begin with. Now she's a lot better without it because her jungle clear is just as good as it was with the spiders. Ares will also be A. He has no clear, but he does damage. It's your trade-off. If you're gonna pick Ares, you kind of need Wrath if you're gonna do anything. Maybe Blink if you feel ballsy and can get by on the early lane clear. Art will be B+. Good team fight. Struggles with what she did before Golden Bow was put in the game, or was buffed to stupidity. Athena will be S. Now, she did kind of drop. It's only because other supports kind of have risen up above her. In a sense, she still has great lane clear, great lane pressure, a global ultimate, and a taunt, which is super useful in team fights. Wheelish will be A+. Good CC. Removal of Power Pot, she's a lot better because she can still clear camps. One of the better picks right now, for jungle at least. Bacchus will be S. This god does stupid amounts of damage. For some reason has good lane pressure, and has a knock-up on a 12-second cooldown. And that's really strong. So yeah, Bacchus is one of those guys to pick as long... Also, he has the passive, which gives him protections, which is really nice. Baka goes down to B. You're not going to really see him at all. Remover of Power Pot, he's really useless in the jungle now. Kind of useless completely useless in solo. He'll get bodied by any warrior at this point. Uh, there's really no reason to pick up Baka. Bastet will also be with Baka. No, not much use to pick her up, other than if you're going to split push her early objective secure. Late game, she kind of does nothing. Without Red Pot, though, you could possibly see her rise to B+, maybe A. But Bastet used Red Pot a lot as well, so there's that. Bellona, A+. This is just because other soloers are kind of out of powering her now, for whatever reason. People have just learned how to play against Bellona, and I feel that's why she's not as good as she once was. Cabrakan will be A, can play 3 roles decently, doesn't really excel at any of them. Removal of Power Pot hurt him a lot, and that's one of the big things that I'm going to be saying in this video in case you haven't already found out. Power Pot being removed hits like half the gods. Probably more than half the gods at this point. Chalk, B. You should never really see a Chalk in your game. If you do, you'll probably just win. His lane clear is meh at best. His heal is still pretty sizable, but he offers no CC except for a silence and a possible knock-up. So Chalk is not that great. Chang'e, B+. If you can get her a late game, she'll be useful. Early game, she's kind of just farming, but does offer some decent healing to the team. Her ult will chunk, and and that immunity frame she has is really useful. Chiron, A. Very balanced for a hunter. Sizable wave clear won't actually get on until mid game, which is what you want in a hunter. Ult's really good. 2 is unmissable. Dash is still really good. Chronos will be A+. Never really needed the power pot to function. It was a nice luxury item, so you're probably going to see more of him in the meta, especially with Fafnir around. Cupid will be B+. The instant ult and a lot of power he has. The only thing he's lacking really heavily is lane clear, kind of like Artemis. Though Artemis does have a better late game than Cupid. Cupid has a much better early game and much more kill potential early. Fafnir is S+, almost on the verge of SS. This guy's entirely broken. His dragon form does way too much damage. He can give his teammates a 50% attack speed buff with a 25% power buff of their power, which is dumb. His stun in dragon form is a protection debuff, and his jump is also a stun, and they do too much damage. He's on the verge of being completely broken. Fenrir, A. Nothing really wrong with that god. Nothing really great. Doesn't really excel anything. Can play 3 roles. Support, jungle, and solo. If you want, you can test him in mid or ADC. I'm not quite sure he'll do too well. Freya will be A. Seeing more prominence with just Freya coming back in general, I guess. If you can get her late game, she's shredding through anything. Early game, she has some struggles, but she's better than Artemis in my opinion. Gab will also be A. Really lacks early pressure. His stun, his ultimate is actually one of the worst support ultimates in the game, just because it's a stun, and a lot of people can beat stuns. It's not like a Bacchus ult where it's doing tremendous damage and then you're drunk for a minute, or Fafnir ultimate where I'm buffing my entire team, or even Ares ultimate where if I pull you, you're going to die. Geb is like, I'll stun you! Maybe, because you have to be super close to me. The only thing that's keeping him in A right now is his shield, which is still super good. Guan is going to go to S, can play 2 roles really well, both support and solo, so expect to see more of him. Hades will be A, good lane clear, can play him in solo or mid. It's a lot harder now, but you can. functions like any other mage right now. Hubwa will be B+, seeing a bit more of him. I don't know if it's because Power Pot's gone and people value his early clear, and then into late game he still does stupid amounts of damage. Well, he's really unsafe, and that's kind of why he's B+. Hell will be B, no damage, very little heal it, or she does... let me rephrase this. She does damage, she does healing, but she gets camped really hard. If you get her late game, great. You got her late game, you're probably not going to die. But if you're playing her in mid, you're going to get killed by the jungler. If you're playing her in solo, you're going to get killed by the solo in jungle. That's probably a fact of life. Herc, with his new buff, is going to be S. This god is dumb. You can full clear wave at level 3. Your heal is still super good. The main problem people had with Hercules was getting him out of the early game into the mid game where he can be tanky and not die to ganks. Still super susceptible to ganks, but if you can clear wave fully by level 3, then there's something wrong. Hu Yi will be S as well. Probably one of the best hunters in terms of boxing skill, great objective secure, and overall going to just chunk you with his penetration. Bots will be A+. Kinda has a weak early game, more strong towards the mid and late game, where he'll actually start hitting people for a lot, and his ult becomes a lot more useful. Good objective secure, but there's no reason to sleep on Hunbats. Isis will be A+. Removal of Power Pot actually kind of helps her. She's one of the main mids used before Power Pot, has great objective secure, great lane clear, and still hurts a lot late game. You could see her rise to possibly S in the coming weeks, depending on how many people would decide to play it, and if she seems to improve towards other mid laners. Giannis gets to be S. He's also one of those gods that really could function without Power Pot, and still Soulstone's in the game, so he's still really good, and he can literally get his team halfway across the map, side to side, forward to one objective or another, and still does stupid amounts of damage. Jinwei will move up to A. You can play her a lot more easily, if nothing else, but because she does, if you play her safe through the laning phase, her late game's actually just like any hunter. Shock. Except she does have the built-in crit, which is really nice. Her knock-up is also spectacular for a hunter as far as CC goes, just she has some trouble getting in and out of fights. Unless she's flying there from base, then she doesn't have trouble getting in. Kali will also be A. Struggles hard without Power Pot, can't really get much early clear going, and will struggle until you get her to 9 or 10. And that's when she'll start to turn online and possibly be able to clear camps by herself. Kali won't be the greatest pick, but if you get her a late game, she'll be like Freya, where she just won't die and she'll kill all your team. Capri is going to take a big drop. He's going to go down to A+. Hugbug didn't really receive some nerfs, but is falling out of the meta. People have learned how to play against this god. His CC is really lacking, having only a soft CC and a root, and a pluck, which would probably get you killed late game. He's really only a revive bot at this point, almost like Thanatos. The only thing that's keeping him an A+ right now is the fact that he gives protections and damage reduction, and also has some of the best lane clear in the game for duo. Cool Khan will be B+. Struggles with the same things Hebo does. Has a slow immunity, but still has good damage, but still is very susceptible to ganks. Kumba will move up to... He's kind of in between S and A+. I'm picking him before Capri. Actually, I'm going to move Capri down to A. I'm going to pick Kumba in between them. Kumba offers a lot of CC, good wave clear, and good damage. What else is there to say about Kumba? His passive is also really nice if you get in trouble. I know it has saved me multiple times from Aokwang ultimates. Loki will be A. Can play 2 roles. You don't really want to play him in the jungle. Solo, he's more of a pub stomp god, kind of a cheese god, but will get the job done if you're trying to assassinate a Freya and Artemis, one of those late game hyper carries that will actually destroy you. He also can split push really well. Medusa will be A. I'm not going to be picking her before Apollo or on her, but I'm definitely picking her above Cupid and Artemis. Her ult is good for team fights. She has decent lane clear. Late game she kind of falls off with her autos, not hitting as hard. And she doesn't have as good as an early game as on her does. Mercury gets to be A as well. He seems relatively balanced. Power pot doesn't really matter to him because Boots gives him about the exact same power Power pot did. If you're picking Mercury before, you can still pick him, just you're still going to have to deal with the same stuff Mercury dealt with before, which is dying. Neith gets to be A+. Her early game clear is unmatched by any hunter almost, except for one. She has a global ultimate, which is super useful, and can be played in both mid and ADC, which makes her a really flex pickable god. Nemesis gets to also be A+. If you get her past early game, kind of like she's like Hunbots. If you get her past early game, you're going to probably shred through people. Taking 50% of someone's health at 20 is just broken, and her shield and slice and dice can actually be really useful. Naja gets to be A. Can combo well. Kind of struggles in the late game. You really have to know what you're doing with this god to get a kill and live. Normally you'll just get one and die right after. Probably best to be picked up in team settings. Nox, A. Lots of single target damage, lots of CC, good early game. Late game she comes and she kind of goes, I got one of you, but I'm going to die. And unless you're stupid enough to stand in her silence, which does tons of damage, you'll probably live through Nox. Nuwa is also A. Her ult is still really good, has good wave clear, decent survivability because of said ultimate. Late game, she can do a good amount with CC. That ultimate will still kill people, but I'm not picking her before I'm picking Isis or before I'm picking Giannis. Odin. A. Best thing about Odin is to pick him into a counter pick like Hercules or Guan Yu. His cage is super useful. Stops healing. New passive is good. Damage is good. Late game is still kinda meh. Osiris, same situation. I'm not picking him unless I'm going into a Vamana or Hercules or Guan Yu, someone that can reduce healing. His late game's just better than Odin. He kinda is like, I'm okay through the entire game. Whereas Odin's like, I'm super OP early game, but I'm kinda meh late game. Poseidon, A. This god has never really had a problem clearing without Power Pot. His Kraken's still really useful. Ra is A, kind of with the same thing with Poseidon. He's never had a problem clearing without Power Pot. Heal is still super useful. If you hit the Solar Blessing, or not the Solar Blessing, Divine Light? I don't know, whatever his ultimate's called, you gotta kill someone. Raijin gets to be S! There's nothing to say about this god. He does stupid amounts of damage and doesn't need Power Pot to clear. Rama gets to be S! I don't know why they decided to buff him. They gave him early clear. They gave him great boxing potential. One of those hunters that could potentially box Hu Yi. His astral arrows are super strong, and he never really had a problem. And they decided to buff him. Kind of like Hercules. Never really had a problem, was relatively balanced, maybe even above the point of balance. And let's give them something to clear, give them more lane clear, because that's what they needed. Rat gets to be S+, even taking a bunch of nerfs. This god is still going to be first pick, first ban. Without Red Pot, he's actually one of the strongest junglers in the game. His Acorn, getting level 2 of it right as you get out of base, is one of the strongest things you can do. Will give you more power than if you were Mercury. It'll give you a more power boost than any jungler starting out, and your level 5 is probably one of the best for junglers other than Ao Kuang, where you can just kind of knock someone up and go, boom, you're dead. Especially like a mid laner or a jungler that's half health. Raven will be S. God doesn't lose lane. Late game, he just kind of sits in the back, or not in the back, in their back line, and just wreaks havoc. Immunity frames are stupid, and Raven can kind of just be a bully. Scylla will take a drop down to A. Removal of Power Pod actually really hurt her early clear. Late game, she's still a monster. She's still Scylla late game, but she's gonna have a bit more trouble getting out of the early game, where she was S, now she's A, because she doesn't have an early game anymore. Circuit gets to be A. In the hands of a master, she can be up to S. In the right comp, she can be up to S. In a bad comp, she can be like poop. So for right now, we're going to put her in A. Healing reduction is super nice. Ult is super good. Lots of burst. One of the few junglers that doesn't need power pot to actually full clear camps at level 1. And not full clear, but do a lot of damage. Her 1 is spectacular for clearing camps. So it does give her a good amount of early game. Scotty, B. One of the best boxers, or the best boxer as far as a hunter is concerned. Good early game, but she's kind of meh. I used my ult, now I'm kind of dead. She suffers from the AMC syndrome, where if I have a lot of power, I can more than likely beat you one-on-one. But late game, or not late game, if you gank me, I'm more than likely going to die. Sobek will be A+. Pluck is useful, has a good amount of CC, has a self-heal, has an ultimate that's really good. Yeah, Sobek. Soul will be S, can be played in 2 roles really well. Without power pots, you can still do a lot in mid and a lot in ADC. One of the best ADCs and mids in the game, in my opinion. Wukong, I'm not picking. Yeah, I think I'd pick you about the same time I pick Saracen and Odin. His lane clear is nothing to be laughed at. He has good lane clear. But past that, late game, he's kind of just a nuisance where I'm just going to smack you once, but not do much damage. Susanoo will be... I almost want to put him in A+, but for now I'm going to put him in S. Tremendous burst damage. Good ultimate. If he gets ahead, you're probably going to lose the game. If you kill him once, you're probably going to win the game. His late game, his early game, if you can get him past, is kind of meh. His mid game is where he's going to shine, where he's going to do 900 damage to one person and just leave them to die to his ultimate. And then his late game is where he kind of falls off, where if I get CC'd once and they know how to target people, I'm likely going to die. But Susanoo is still a really good pick in my opinion. Sylvanas will be B. No escape, really hurts him early game. Heals are good. His ultimate's probably one of the best in the game for supports, as far as like CC is concerned, giving them a knock-up and dot damage, which that dot damage is a lot. Sylvanas is decent support if you can get past early game, then he can do something. Fancy Toes. Let's see. I know I'm picking you before these guys. Would I pick you before Circuit? No. I think I'd pick you about in the same case I would pick Circuit. You don't need a buff. You do good early game damage. You didn't need a red pot to function well. And your execute's really good. Just late game, you become a complete execute bot where you're just targeting out tank after tank. Good counter pick if they pick Capri for whatever reason. Thor will be S. This god never needed red pot. You can still function perfectly fine without it. Has a great level 5 where he can come and gank, almost as good as Ratatoskers, but Ratatoskers is a knock-up, so his is inherently better. Can't be beatsed. Thor still does a lot of damage, in late game he becomes a kinda warrior-ish kinda person. Tier. I'm gonna throw you an A+. Will be hard countered by Guan Yu, so don't pick tier into Guan Yu, but any other guy he'll probably hold his own against. Late game he becomes just that warrior guy that's just going to be annoying to you. His Fearless is really good for repositioning and lane clear though. Also he has a great heal. Uller will be A. If you know how to play him, he's great. If you don't, he's poop. Kind of struggles early game, though he can do a tremendous amount of burst. Late game is where he's going to shine. Late game and mid game, kind of like AMC, except he's a lot more safe. And he does have 6 abilities kind of open to his interpretation as he needs. If I'm honest, give me A. I'm not picking him ahead of Odin or Osiris, but I'm definitely not picking. I'm not picking him over Tyr or Billa, but I'm definitely not gonna not pick him. I guess would be the correct term. He can still function well in solo with Bluestone. Has good clear. Ultimate's still really good. Kind of does the same thing as Wukong late game. Just kind of hops into the backline, becomes a nuisance. Though he can be very focused and die very quickly. Vulcan will be A. Good lane clear if you get him to late game. He does tremendous burst damage. I feel like Vulcan without power pop functions just as well as he did before. Maybe slightly worse. His ultimate's still going to be used for has good objective secure with his ultimate. Yeah, Vulcan's about as good as he was. Chiba Alanke will be B+. I'm definitely not picking him where I would be picking like Jinwei or Medusa. He has probably the worst early game of any hunter, and that's including Cupid. Cupid has a better early game. He has the worst level 1 through 4, in my opinion. His clear is lackluster. Can be really easily killed. Once you hit 5, he's still kinda. I can do stuff. Expect to be camped if you're playing Chibalanke, if the other team has a clue. Late game, he'll swing like a truck like an AMC or an Artemis, and his ult is one of the best in the game for team fighting. Xing Chen gets to be a B. God can be played in 2 roles. I wouldn't recommend playing him in support. Solo is probably where you're going to see this god. His ultimate is kind of useless, kind of only giving him 3 abilities without an ultimate. Other than that, he's decent, and his 3 is really laggy. Or buggy, I should say. It's like jumping, wait, I didn't jump again, okay, I did jump, now I'm over here. It's a weird thing with Xing Chen, but he does do a good amount of damage. Ymir will be A+. I'm picking this god before I'm picking an Ares or a Khepri, but I'm not going to be picking him ahead of Bacchus or Athena. If you're picking him into Nemesis, you shouldn't be, because you will die. That is like the one hard counter to Ymir is Nem. But Ymir against Fafnir is not the worst idea. You provide lane pressure, good amounts of CC, and a good wall to force out his jump if you need to. Plus your ult is great objective secure. In my opinion, he is the one counter to Fafnir, as he also does do damage reduction with his Frostbite now, which is really useful. Just don't pick him into Nemesis or you're going to die. Zeus is perfectly balanced. Yeah, gonna do burst damage, but can still get camped really easily, but can still do a lot of damage. For whatever reason, I feel like he's better than Habla, who has more of an escape than him, but Zeus has more from a range than Habla can, and is a lot more confirmable damage. And lastly, Zhang Hui. Put him in B+ for now. With Nemesis kind of coming back in the meta, he is really, really dying. His wave clear is really, really bad. Until he hits like level 4, he won't be able to do anything on the wave. Or not 4, I'm sorry, level like 6 or 7. Solo lane is probably where you're going to see him the most. You won't see him in mid lane, because if you do, he's probably going to die. Even so, I wouldn't expect to see Zhang Hui. And in case I haven't gone over it, you're probably going to see Erlang Shen in S. I don't see him as like the must-pick, must-ban god, but he is kind of just a nuisance with his taunt and his massive amounts of auto-attack damage. And if I were to rate Terra, she'd probably be like B+, maybe A or B, depending. I need more testing on her. That's going to do it for this tier list. Remember, these are just my opinions. Feel free to disagree with them, leave a like, comment if you want, subscribe if you want to as well. Thanks for watching.